This is LS, and you're on Thorin's YouTube channel, so cut the Western shit.
This is going to be episode 9 of Middle Kingdom Minds. You know what, Raz? What we'll do on this one is no prelude, no preamble, nothing beginning with pre, just straight in. Well, I mean, I should really have worked in something there to do with like the rapper Dupree and then being like about something about dropping hot beats or something. I could have done something with it. Could have done something with it, whatever. So we're into it now. I want to talk immediately about what was actually first questions first, right? How does the trade or deadline or like roster deadline work in LPL? Because how can you add someone so late in the split?
Oh, I mean, I feel like it could just happen anytime. I'm always surprised, like, how late into the split, like, Uzu would come in last year.
Yes.
I was like, I guess it's just built for this. Like, it's just like, like it only matters at the playoffs. I will see you then.
Because for people who don't know, one of the primary change, obviously, for this split for Royal Never Give Up was changing out Let Me and bringing in AmazingJ. And AmazingJ actually did perform pretty well in many ways. I think, he overcame any of the kind of meme status he had before because Royal Never Give Up looking like a good team. But still in a scenario where it's not the same. It's not the same as the old RNG. And so, bizarrely, the guy who actually retired, which was Zitai, the legendary, funny enough, originally legendary mid laner, but obviously he's been playing top lane for the last few years. And this is someone where, again, if people only watched Worlds or MSI, etc., and they didn't get to watch the LPL, they might think, like, what's the significance of that? But that's actually another component that people look at from the Worlds result of not winning Worlds, where RNG was favoured, which is because you only can take the one sub, they obviously chose to take the jungle sub because they preferred to swap out MLXG and Karsa. That was the scenario they preferred. But everyone looks back now and sees how powerful solo laners were and thinks Zitai would actually have been, that's maybe a tournament that was carved out for him. If he could have played a few games there, could have made a big difference on the team. So Zitai is coming back. He's going to play for RNG again. What do you think of this move?
It's probably the best move they could ever make. Because even though early on, like preseason, I was coming in, I was like, AmazingJ, man, this guy right here is going to be like essentially boosting this team up in terms of team fighting aspects. Can maybe even be like, have some nice carry options that Let Me couldn't do. I never touched Zitai, by the way, because I said that Zitai, if you gave me 3 players, I would say Zitai is the better one. Because I just legitimately thought that he was more flexible. The meta was favoring him, and he was just like, not only was he the most flexible, I would rely on him to be able to play carries a whole lot more than Let Me did. And I still need to see AmazingJ on a team that was above 500. Well, guess what? We saw that. AmazingJ on a team that was doing well consistently. He was playing on it, and goddamn was it just sad. It was statistically in the laning phase, he wasn't strong. He had some good team fight moments, but Lord have mercy, is this. He just, I a lot of times I give players, like benefit of the doubt on certain plays, or I feel like, if they like basically don't think for one moment, I'll forget about it. I'll be like, oh, it's okay. I've seen a whole length of your work where you're able to make some good shit happen. AJ, I feel like every time I see him in the series, he's always making a really poor decision in laning phase. In a laning phase situation, he's just really like he's falling behind. If he's in a losing part of the map, he teleports right back and then just like he literally kills himself. I'm like, please, like casting those sets make me sad. And then his team fight, I wanted it to be much better. That's what he was coming in for, was just like for how strong his teleport and team fighting was. But in comparison to Let Me, I didn't really see them. I didn't see it different. Like I didn't. So I was like, wow. I think AmazingJ coming onto RNG was like one of the largest flops I've seen in a transition from one player going from one team to the next. Like, I wouldn't call it a trade because AJ technically like stepped down when he was on BLG to make the move to RNG. But it really was poor for him. The Zitai coming in is definitely an upgrade. If they had never left Zitai, obviously I would have favored Zitai over AmazingJ, but nah, man, he's back, and like this team is definitely looking for a championship.
even despite what you say there, RNG's still been winning a lot of series, Yeah. Now, admittedly, these are a lot closer series than you might expect if you look at the opposition. A lot of 3-game series, a lot of chances to lose. So I can see there were still holes in the team, clearly. Right? Yeah. What have you thought of them the last couple of weeks? And then obviously, by the time this episode airs, they will already have played the big marquee matchup, which is that they have the match against IG. And obviously, they not only have the opportunity to use Zatai in that, but that's his whole team. So what do you think about RNG last couple of weeks then leading into this match?
I think what we wanted to see out of RNG, we saw, which was a team that was dominated not by Uzi, but by Xiaohu and Karsa. Karsa and Xiaohu really decimated their opponents. I think the only instance I felt like they were, taking a few steps back was when they went up against Kuro at Meteor in that best of 3 against PLG. Like, that was the series I was saying that Meteor had the better of Karsa in 2 out of the 3 games. I would say the 3rd game, Meteor was also ahead, but that was just because PLG's strategy was to put Karsa behind, recognizing that the only way RNG has been getting leads is through Karsa Xiaohu, and then they've been trying to get Uzi on board, which is the right way to play. You should always be focusing on your mid lane before you end up going towards your AD carry. If RNG go back to making that mistake they made in the internationals, and you're like, oh, okay, you deserve to lose, but like Karsa and Xiaohu have been like playing out of their minds. Yes. And then the JD series, it was another series where AmazingJ was just like once again finding ways to create deficits for his team, but at the end of it, it really felt like it was like Xiaohu and Uzi in team fights. There was that 2v5 situation too around Baron where it was just like sick to see Xiaohu just flashing over the wall and literally look like getting a kill, looking to push for more. JD should have been able to take the series based off of how well they've been setting up for Barons, and Zoom was super far ahead, but I mean, if you have AmazingJ on Yorick and you just look to split push at that end, it's the same way they beat Vici Gaming. So RNG, they don't even look happy after those wins because it felt like they could have been able to snowball that lead after, I would say, the laning phase, 15 minutes out of the game. But they always, once again, I really need to see how Zatai plays on this team now, because this team could definitely be a championship team, like going up against IG once again. If they have top lane in order.
Yeah, one of the things that's kind of weird is, it's funny because Uzi and Doublelift obviously share certain qualities if you look at them domestically, and you look at like they've always been these like hyper carry, hard carry, AD carries, and both of them basically have had for their whole careers the narrative around them that like the whole team just has to play through them all the time, like they need all the resources, they need to carry. And I've noticed, even when it isn't like strictly true, like it doesn't have to be that way, there does seem to be a tendency that these teams just have periods in time where they just go into that mode. Whereas for anyone who hasn't seen, Xiaohu himself has been an MVP caliber player in the LPL. And as you see in these games here, once you get someone like that rolling early in the game, if Uzi is your insurance policy, you're going to win a lot of fucking games. That's a great way to play League of Legends.
And he's stacking up high interest. Like Uzi right now is the best laner in terms of an AD carry. Like he's been averaging 10 CS CS difference against any AD carry that he goes up against. So the fact that he's able to do that well in lane while not getting the pressure because it's mid lane and like mid lane jungle, and sometimes AmazingJ's been getting pressure too because it's so easy to be able to get the kill there. Karsa has his early leads. Uzi's just winning out in lanes, even in counter matchups too. This is just what we want to see out of RNG. They don't need to pull or push like jungle pressure towards the bottom lane for them to have that early lead. So, like, this is good shit. Like, Karsa needs to be in that MVP. Karsa and Xiaohu needs to be in that MVP mode. It's nice to see Xiaohu actually being able to play like the regular season this well, because usually he comes online for playoffs, and then when they go into internationals, he's gone again. I'm like, what? Please, man.
I've noticed that one of the trends of the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks is as soon as any team secures the top spot in the LPL, It's like it's almost like okay. You remember when Fortnite was first really popping off, right? And it was getting so big that like not only was all the people in esports playing it, but you would see all these mad stories in the news, about everything was just about Ninja. And I remember seeing this one clip, right, where Ninja just drops into a game, and it's like every single person in this game is like, "It's Ninja, get Ninja! I'm going after Ninja. Yeah. Ninja's over there." It's like they were all just swarming him like some mad like zombie movie or something, right? That is actually how it feels. As soon as a team gets the top spot in the LPL, it's like any team, even in the bottom half, are just like, right, one of us is going to upset this motherfucker. Because obviously, we've watched all these teams go up and fall down. Like, right, okay, so early on, IG was easily the best team. Okay, everyone's waiting. Don't worry, UziI's coming back after Chinese New Year. They come back, still not the best team yet. Obviously, FPX was undefeated. That's fallen by the wayside now. Oh, wait, maybe top. Maybe top is the truth, Raz. What about this result then of TOP being beaten by WE? Because again, this is one where it's like, it's one thing for the team to lose, but you don't necessarily expect it to be these squads near the bottom of the table. So what do you think of this result?
I think it says a lot about WE's current run. Sure, TOP losing in this fashion because we set them up to be like the best team in the LPL.
Yes.
But that one's a little tough to watch and swallow because like TOP right now, I think how they play late game team fights still need to be looked at because remember, meta's changing. They can't just snowball early anymore because like literally 70% of the split has just been snowball early lane phase leads. And then if you get picked team fights at like 5k goal lead, you just stop because you have Knight on your team. Now they're getting challenged because these team fight these games are lasting 30 minutes before any team really gets a considerable advantage. Like that's insane. So like you're starting to see Team WE, and this is where they're coming into this, where they're like a strong team fighter, like CA and Mystic in particular. Mystic has been coming up with the crit changes that have been coming through. He's been able to pick the 80 carries that he wants, like team fighting 80 carries, and the rest of the team being like, all right, Post is like, my only objective in life is to protect my 80 carry or just to dive so I could create space for him. It makes direction on the team so much easier. So the like subpar laning phase that we're seeing from him and like carry performance on like split pushing has been the weakest thing from Post just because he's doing it at all the wrong moments. Finally, we're seeing them all really just group up, push and roam and look for mid lane fights. That's the takeaway that I had against TOP was that this is the WE that I wanted. Beishang was much better at being able to pick out early leads and work alongside CA to be able to challenge Raptors early. This is something that Magic wasn't able to do consistently, and even though they brought in Magic one of those earlier games to be able to say, hey, you know what, let's see if we can pick up a win. Magic had a better series in comparison to his early portions of the split, but Beishang right now just creates direction for their team early, which is something we needed to see from them ever since they had that hole in their team, losing Condi. Like that's WE coming back into the playoffs and being ready for teams. I don't expect TOP to be losing like that anytime soon. They have those off games, like they lost to SinoDragons when Knight was like, well, the enemy jungler just had my number, man. I was dual queuing with him a little bit too much. And then in this series, even though it wasn't like that, they had to respect WE. And sometimes you just have those off days.
Yeah, bearing in mind WE is like poised right now to sneak into one of those last playoff spots. Yeah, that's a team that's going to be fun to watch because, as you say, like somehow the meta, everything's just good. They finally got the lineup in a good spot. Anytime you watch these games and Mystic is popping off like this, like every game pretty much now, the guy's having big time performances. Like, I know he's not a person who, it's weird because what people forget is, even though WE made that top 4 run at Season 7 Worlds, I feel like that bizarrely is the run that no one remembers. Everyone remembers like, oh, it was won by the Samsung team and, everyone remembers the other side of the bracket with Will Never Give Up and SK, but everyone always never gives credit to the WE run because I've always told people like, it's weird how some players like didn't make it in Korea and then in China they're just money. Like Mystic's a great example. Every time he's online, WE actually is a pretty good team.
Yeah, I mean, people are fickle when it comes to a player or a team that has done so well, and if they have just one bad split, maybe 2 bad splits, people instantly turn off. People are like, nah, man, this team's not good. This team's shit. I was like, wait a minute, because like I've never I've always held hope for Team W. I've said that they have two strong players, like two of like top talent in the league.
Sure.
CA in 2018 spring was the second best mid laner next to Rookie. Like that's how strong he came off of not having Condi. And even though summer split was like downhill, I felt like, okay, get your roster in order. Stop this. Like that needed to stop. There is no situation in which you're subbing anyone out for Mystic. Gentle and Imp, the fact that those AD carries even saw play in 2018 was a travesty. That needed to stop. And then in the mid lane, I know early on in the split they came out with Chen 9, but I was like, okay, please, you have to learn from your mistakes. There's never a situation where you sub out your star talent. Just don't, like, all you need to do, play them. And the only players you have to ever sub out are the players who are facilitating that role around them. Like Pose is one member that I actually thought that needed a little bit of challenging earlier on in the split, but I think he's coming together. And then you have Beishang and Magic, who's been the main stage of like the rotating lineup. And right now you're finally seeing the team understand their roles and how to be able to work around their primary players. But also, you're right, like CA and Mystic finally got their team fight like meta. The meta heavily favors them. So the fact that has happened at the same time as the team coordination really starting to work out for them, finally, that's just what Team WE need to get themselves back in the playoffs.
One of the teams that I feel like in all the turnover of like some of the teams that were really good early on and then some of the teams that are falling off now, the team that's probably been like the stealth team is Jingdong, because you keep looking, they've never looked like they should be the best team. You think with all these other big names, obviously a lot of good names below them in the league right now, that they might have been a team that was, forced to the edge of the playoff race, and they're just consistently right there. They've been in great position all split long. So where do you think they're at coming into the playoffs now?
Oh, good question. I think JD, they're a strong lineup save for just one member who's starting to get into gear, and that's Imp. They're just not picking Bavoy as much, which I appreciate, because I think that if we're just talking about a caliber of player who can deal with pressure, it's always has been Imp. It's just literally getting him into gear, getting him into team fights, because laning phase has been consistently poor from Imp in particular. I think recently he's gotten a lot better at that, but that hasn't been necessary. So if we're just talking about like playoff teams who are above JD, like easily I would say FPX, TOP, IG. That's it. That's the easiest one. I'd say RNG as well. And then even at that point, I would say EDG and BLG. So JDG for me become like essentially a bottom feeder only because their AD carry is so on a separate page from the rest of the team. Even in the games that they've been winning recently. The game that felt the best for them was the Suning series. Suning is not even looking to be in the playoffs, even though they're starting to play better. It felt like Suning was also a team that felt disconnected to their AD carry, but even still, SMLZ was doing well on his own, where Imp's Vayne, trying to find him into team fights was a meme. Like a lot of the times he was getting poked out before he was able to get in. He was trying to run in frontliner, like challenging that he had the mechanics to be able to do it. But he would get like chunked 60, 70% of his HP. And it's not that Imp is poor. He's just such a I think CoinFit player is overly simplistic, but he definitely has his moments. If he has his moments, then the team looks stellar. But far too often, he's trying to hunt for those moments, and he's just like falling flat.
Fair enough. Right, what do you make of IG? Because the interesting thing is, I think like the sentiment's pretty common that everyone doesn't really seem to care how IG looks in the regular split. It's like as long as they get in the good playoff seed, as long as they get it all together in the playoffs, we'll all forgive them. But people forget they have to win the split. They don't do that. So there's a lot of hype for me, a lot of like pressure still, because sure, no other team's really secured themselves as like this is the dominant team that would beat them. That hasn't quite happened yet. As we said, it's been that turnover of teams. But IG themselves don't yet really look like the team that won Worlds at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the last 3 series that they've had have been against like one of our worst teams. I feel like the one that has been that exception has been the Team WE series, but even that one, I felt like they should have been able to just take that, because that's different standards, man. They should always be able to beat those echelon of teams if they're world champions. And I think a lot of it has been on Rookie and Ning. the Shaw is always 100%, man. That guy is not playing. The only time he's not playing is literally when he's not on the stage and the team has benched him in Game 3 versus FPX. They need to stop doing that as well. And then when I think Jakulev as well has always been that type of player where he either like wins your lane hard or gets ganked in a 3v2 situation and doesn't have jungle. He doesn't respect jungle pressure. That's just how life is anymore. Like teams have now played and strategized to level 2 gank him. Like, and if that's happening consistently now, you have to start playing easy, much like respectfully. So IG's put in a position where Ning and Rookie haven't been as coordinated as they have been last split, and Rookie in particular, who has been number one mid laner for me for so long, has been dethroned by some very consistent mids right now. I would say right now in this split, Knight ranks higher because he's far more consistent of a player in team fights, in lanes. But Rookie is still an exceptional talent. So I expect them this close to playoffs and now going up against RNG, 100% they're putting the importance in the series. So I think IG should be ready for that one. And like, that's the thing, man. Whenever it comes to like regular season performance, like I watch a lot of NBA and being able to say, yeah, this team will turn it on for a best of 5. It's tough to be able to like make that statement, but people need to remember that there was once upon a time where like regular seasons weren't this long.
Yes. That
regular seasons were not really, just didn't exist. And I'm particularly talking about like OGN format. Like just when you get into a tournament bracket, people put in so much preparation, focus, and time into that because they know that every game matters. But right now, you're only really seeing that for teams that are trying their hardest to get into the playoffs. So, of course, I expect much higher out of Invictus Gaming in that. Right now, they're they're fighting for position, but there are certain teams that are so confident in their own play that they don't really care too much if they have to play an extra best of 5. It might be even better for them.
If we look at the schedule remaining, FPX's last 3 games are against BLG, Vici Gaming, and then they end against Victory 5. So they actually have a very nice chance to just outright take first place at the end of the split. They could well be the team at the end that goes in with the number 1 seed, which obviously would be very interesting. What would you make of that? Because obviously it's looking like it's going to happen. Yeah,
I think FPX and TOP would be my best bet, being the teams that get to that number 1 seed, number 2 seed as well. So like that is going to be pretty damn good for both of those teams. It's pretty sad that playoff implications and all of that, like the playoff structure hasn't been released. Like that's the most bizarre thing about the LPL sometimes, is that you just want to know what it looks like at the end of the road. It's like, please, what?
Because they have experimented a lot with the brackets, etc.
Yes. And so like for every other split, every other region that knows what the playoff structure looks like when you get into the playoffs at the beginning of the season, LEC made this entire announcement. They were like, hey, you know what? This is this new playoff structure before their split even started. And the LPL is like, yes, it's week 9. What does it look like? So we're just making the assumption that it's based off of last splits, even though that was in a West versus East kind of format. And if that's the case, then that means that FPX and TOP would be slotted into the semifinal spot, which is huge for those teams. True. And what it means to FPX is that if they lose, they go into third place matchup, and that's a pretty damn nice, comfortable spot to be in, where you only have to play 2 best of 5s to win the championship. And I think FPX need that. It gives them a lot of time to prepare for their opponents. And very likely that means it's either going to be Invictus Gaming or RNG. So if that's what you have to prepare for, then God bless. Like that's the easiest way to play it out.
One of the teams who have a brutal end schedule is BLG, because BLG plays FPX, IG, and TOP. So what I can tell you is, if BLG's in the playoffs, they probably did some fucking work on these last 2 weeks, because that is a murderer's row, as they say in poker, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy that just looking at the standings, and the standings can change. In fact, the standings will change tonight depending on how Suning does. Right. But the most important part of the standings for me is literally BLG, EDG, WE, and SinoDragons that are all essentially tied for 7 and 5. SinoDragon is 7 and 6. But that's just saying that, please, any of one of those teams don't lose, or you lose your spot in the playoffs. Because just looking at this, like everyone was so high on, including me, on the fact that BLG would be the 4th best team. But there's always been those people out there, including me, that would say, hey, but they still have their hardest part of the schedule. They still need to be able to win some of these games, not only just to make it in the playoffs, but not only to get good seedings, but to make it into the playoffs. So they're in a really tough position. If I'm to call out who makes it into the playoffs, I think for sure the way BLG is playing, they make it. There's no way they lose a playoff opportunity. That is so foreign to me. The only thing that I would say is my preseason rankings had them at like 7th place, or 8th. I think it was 8th if my memory works. But I would put them. I would say the 6th place position is where they stay. Where they're currently at, just based off of like points, because they have like 1 point over EDG. But also, I just believe that even in their last few series, they should be able to beat Oh my God, who are they going to be able to beat? FPX. I'm going to say FPX. I'm going to be
the upset.
I'm going to say they have the upset on FPX just because stylistically, they should be able to play to that, and they've shown in Game 3 of the last series that they can play a faster-paced game. They're not just locked in of being able to play reactively and slow. So I think FPX series, they'll take that, and then they'll lose the rest. I don't see how they beat Invictus Gaming and TOP.
Obviously, one of the revelations on the BLG team has been Meteor, the jungler. And if you look at it, most of the games they win, he's the MVP. He's the guy who's having big moments. Like, where do you see this guy kind of fitting into their team? Like, why is he so essential?
Who's the player again?
Meteor?
Yeah, Meteor. Meteor is so crucial. Now, a lot of it is just because the way they play is much slower pace. So they're the only team that right now, alongside, EDG, that can play Nocturne pretty consistently, because that's like they can get to that level 6 mark without having to make too many plays, and they can slow the pace down. He works very well alongside Kuro and Mini, their support, to be able to layer wards around mid lane, so Kuro has the best laning phase possible. But Meteor coming into the split, I thought that he was going to be essential. Like, if we're just talking about what the style of the team was going to be, I thought Meteor was great being a proactive player, someone who can get them ahead early on, so when they get into team fights, they would be able to be competitive. But what he's turned into a jungler that really is dialed it back into not a reactive style, but a farming style jungler who really favors experience. So when he went up against Karsa, I thought that was his best series of the split. As a young talent, rookie talent, he schooled Karsa only because he recognized which camps to go for. He got the proper jungle matchup. He constantly had Kuro pressuring, so he had like Kuro in his pocket. He had everything ready and dialed for him. And that's more of an indication of how the team has been in terms of like Coach Sim, the structure, just like the confidence that they've had in his ability to grow throughout the split, because early on in the split, he had some real bad performances, but he was getting better and better and more consistent. So Meteor, if 369 man wasn't in this league, I would say that he's vying for rookie of the split. So like it's tough, but 369's got your number on that.
Sure. So despite all the up and down, EDG still in actually a spot where you can never like 100% write this team out. Like, they obviously have a lot of talent, and if you have that much talent, you're going to have times when it all comes together. Where do you actually think they're at in the context of potentially making a playoff run? Are they a team that can upset?
EDG?
Yes.
Oh, they're I think they're comfortably in, even though they're technically not comfortably in. In terms of the standings, they're not comfortably in, but they have to go up against Victory 5 later on, so I think that's like an easy pickup. Invictus, like, other than that, I would say EDG goes 1 for 2, but should still remain because they have more points than SinoDragons handily, and on top of that, even if they tie, which I think is the best case scenario, it's not the best case scenario for SinoDragons, but very realistic, then it's pretty easy that they go through. So I have a high expectation EDG will do it. They just will find themselves starting out in the first round of the playoffs, which is always the hardest gauntlet run that you can go for. They're just a great team, man. Clearlove came in with his first Evelyn pick with a reworked Evelyn, and whenever you see that, you have some you're like, oh, this might not pay off. Evelyn and pre-6 is pretty damn useless, but it's essentially Scout, Ray, and iBoy that have been putting in the work, being able to get themselves early game leads, and they've been doing that consistently enough where all you really need out of your jungler is like the ability to catch up, keep up in experience, and protect their lanes. And I think they're in a really good spot doing that.
Do you think that there's any teams that will be in the playoffs that they can beat in a best of 5?
I would give them JD. I think that JD series looks really good. So if they're in a good standing to be able to take on JD, I think they upset them. No, I shouldn't even be an upset. I think JD are just a weaker team overall. And then I would say against... Wow, that's hard. I would think it's only JD. Just under the assumption that WE and EDG pick up the same slot, so they would be on the opposite side of the bracket and can't face each other, then I would say that they would need to go up against JD. And then after that point, they would need to just upset, because the rest is like BLG, IG, TOP, FPX. I don't have them against either of them.
Right, you alluded to it earlier, but Sunning, it's funny, right? Because there's 2 teams in the world, Raz, that were called super teams coming into their splits, and that's Misfits in LEC, and that is Sunning over here. And you know what? Both of them look like they're going to end with the same fate, which is don't even make the playoffs, which is like, you know, these are teams that people thought could win the splits. Now, potentially not even going to make the playoffs with the way this is going. So what do we make of the collapse of Sunning here? What never happened for them?
It's real tough. Because a lot of it comes down to what was going to make this team good, and it was literally going to be the fact that they have great laners, they have great team fighters. There was not an aspect of this game that I really thought was big enough, like in terms of a weakness, to lose to most of these teams. And it seems like one of the biggest aspects that I was worried about initially, which is like bottom lane laning phase and the dynamic between SMLZ and Sword Art, really came into light. Where Sword Art can't really go towards an aggressive support option. He's gone towards very supportive ones like Tom Kench, just because if he ends up leaving the lane, SMLZ ends up falling alone. And that happens too consistently enough where, remember, first few weeks, SMLZ has been picking up like best of the Rift, MVPs. He was doing really well on it, like getting into team fights and just being a sick player. But early laning phase was an issue, and even then, it feels like right now when he's in team fights, he's just trolling, like in the worst positions possible. So it feels like for him, it's been an individual downgrade. He's been playing worse comparatively to the early portions of the split. But also, if we're just saying one of the major weaknesses that they've been trying to hold on to is the Maple in the mid lane, who has not been strong in laning phase and has been more of a supportive player that they've been trying to work around. 2v2 with Hacker top lane and mid lane have just been considerably worse. So the team has been trying to grasp around how the early game has not been consistent with them. And then how team fights have just been worse relative to all of the better teams. So it's like, I do not think they know what the issue is. Because almost 100% of the time it comes down to communication of how you're falling in almost the exact same ways every time. In team fights where Xiao gets picked off when they're playing, like a standoff, Mexican standoff around mid lane or Baron area, or SMLZ fairly consistently. It comes down to knowing your role, and Xiao knows his role. Hacker, I'm trying to figure that out again, and Maple theoretically knows his role, but only from the previous team. Right now, he's trying to fit into this specific iteration of the team, and it's been a travesty. I think if we're talking about what needs to change from this split to the next split, because I'm almost sold on the fact that they're not making the playoffs. Sure. I don't believe it anymore. And if I'm looking at this team, I think a look at the mid lane would be important, but I would think Maple needs to stay because I think he's gotten much better when he first got subbed out. It would have to be the bottom lane. And I think it's crazy to say that the one person that I said was the best player who hasn't been to Worlds has been playing this poorly in so many series. And even when he was playing well, and this is the worst thing, is that when you have a guy who's been balling so well, but just doesn't say a word, you're like, we can't do anything about it. Like when he was on Rogue Warriors, he was playing so well, but like the communication was certainly off, and he was not having a good laning phase consistently. You're like, doesn't matter, man. His biggest strength has been how much he farms. He's like the Reckless in the sense that, in fact, it reminds me exactly like Reckless, where he farms up so well. He's been able to like always get to the team fights so strongly. Like you don't question all of that. You only question the early parts of the laning phase, but you're willing to give that away for such a massive strength, what now SMLC does not have. So I'm like, all right, we'll give him some time. I think having a challenge to his position would be nice, but I don't know what that would look like because I don't see any AD carry in the LDL, maybe other than Closer, who people I think will know him a little bit more in the future, who can take that position. I don't think there is really that top tier AD carry right now who can do it other than maybe those few players. So we'll have to see how Summer Split goes. But right now, I think it's their complete issues based around communication. And in those few instances, is like individual mechanics.
So the SinoDragon team is right on the borderline of potentially being a playoff team. Obviously, one or two of these teams have to get squeezed out just by how many spots there are left. Yeah. What do you make of this team overall then? Because this is one where, again, you wouldn't necessarily expect too much from their lineup, but I think overall, in that context, a pretty good split so far.
Yeah, pretty good. Like just around where I pegged them. I think too many teams, players and fans and all of that looked at this like LDL team and like was like, all right, they're gonna be like last place, you know? They just had no faith in that kind of team because they were all rookie players. But I had them placed around like 9th, 8th place. I was like, this is where they should be. Every team below them, I expect to be below them just because of team play and coordination. I've had swap team WE and Suiting. So like the only difference here in terms of how I would rank SinoDragons in their current placement is that WE would be worse than them, Suiting would be better. So like that's a big surprise that WE has actually been strong enough to technically have a point advantage and be doing so well this later on in the split. But it's all in Twyla, Jiangheng, and Gala. I did not expect Gala to be this strong. In the LDL, they were swapping between both AD carries, Gala and Alone. But finally, Gala stays in. They say Alone, he's no longer a part of the team. And then he's been like such a strong team fighter for the squad, and he's been able to keep up at laning phase quite easily. This is a better meta for him as well, where laning phase advantages aren't that pronounced. So that's one thing, and I think Twyla has been like coming in with so many damn new picks. Like there's the Zillion, there's like Aurelion Sol, there's like so many that he goes towards. That it's nice to see like that he always has that flexibility in the draft. And I didn't mention Xiaopeng, but he's been trying to go for like kindred pickups. He's been I think he's probably one of the better he's definitely been one of the better newer players in the lineup because he always has a direction that he always wants to be able to etch like early game leads for himself. He always calls an adjacent lane. So Jiangheng and Twyla are always willing to give up farm and experience to get him ahead. And if that's something that they've been willing to do so consistently, that is literally the problem with every team below them. So I think their willingness to sacrifice for their jungler and AD carry have been a major strength for them. I don't think they'll make it to playoffs because I think Team WE learned that pretty later on and are now in a great position that they are just better players. And I've always expected the talent to rise up, that CA and Mystic, if they got themselves a team around them, they'd be able to carry. So that's where I think SinoDragons are in an issue with. That's their biggest problem.
As we come towards the end of the split, give me like your top 3 MVP candidates. Who for you are the 3 that stand out? And then obviously we'll decide at the end after the final week who should get it overall. So what are the big 3 for you?
All right. I'm looking. It should be, I think easily DoNB is in the run for MVP. Yeah. I'm just going through some of these players. I don't want to give Knight MVP this or oh my god, I guess I'm gonna.
It's too early in his career, but he has to be a contender, right? If you look at how it's gone.
Yeah, really is. So and then looking at it, I think Ray has had such a his early portion of the split is something that's gonna have to is gonna be a pain in his butt, but I think his mid and late portions of this split have been monstrous. Like literally week 5 onwards have been insane from Ray. So it's nice to be able to see that. That's already 3 players. Holy shit, never mind.
Do you want to squeeze Ray out for someone else?
Yeah. So for now, I'm just looking just to make sure that the last person stays on, because right now it's a little sad that they're all mid laners. Sure. Yeah, I think it is literally just all mid laners. Oh no, wait. Holy shit. Yeah, this is actually just crazy. Do I have any rules? Are there any rules about them being on the same team?
Oh, in theory, you could be on the same team, sure.
Yeah. This is such an indictment on one player in particular, but I'm going to move. No, it remains. It's going to stay. It's going to stay. I'll just say the honorable goes to Karsa. But overall, it's going to be Doumbé, Knight, and Xiaohu. I think Xiaohu 100% deserves to be in that conversation because his entire split has just been insane. Knight has been a player who's just smashed lanes almost like consistently. That you can't give him Zoe, you can't give him Corki. There will always be the asterisks that a lot of these mid laners, all of them, have had outstanding junglers alongside them, and I think that's necessary. You can't have an outstanding mid laner without the jungler to be able to prop you up, which I think Xiaohu, Knight, and Doumbé has always had that level of control over their junglers. But at the same time, it's about team fight proficiency, how well they've done from minute 1 to minute 30. I think all of them have had outstanding performances. All of them so consistent. Doumbé literally just picked up FunPlus from obscurity back into number 1 position. And that cannot be. In fact, if I were to say one definitive person, I would say Doumbé picks it up because of how well he's played. And then, I mean, Knight is just, I think he's the best mid laner. So it's like, if he's just the best mid laner, if he's the best mid laner, and if he's the best player in the LPL, that's the easiest one. And then I had a debate between like Karsa and Xiaohu. Both of them have had monstrous portions of the split. I would probably give it to Karsa only because I have 3 mid laners, but that wouldn't make sense to me for me to just do that off of some random inclusionary rule, right? So, yeah. And for me, the only reason why I thought this is a major indictment on the player, because how does it play to have 2 MVP caliber players on your team and you're still just eking out victories? Like, that's how sad it is. You will never in your life be surrounded by so many good players. It's like let me think of this. Right now, if I were to ever compare a player's current performance to like just being beside, it's like Draymond Green being on the Golden State Warriors. Like, Jesus, Lord have mercy, I better not play poorly. And he doesn't. Like, to Draymond's like basically to his credit, he's the guy who tries to feed them the ball, a massive amount of assists that he's able to accrue. But it's like if AmazingJ was just planted on the court and he was just falling face flat. That's what's happening. He is like the Draymond Green, but like kneecapped. That's what's sad about it. That makes me sad just to look at that and faced with that reality that Karsa and Xiaohu are having the best regular seasons they have ever had. And they're just trying to carry one man. You know, that's sad. It's a sad day.
This video was supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas, Snazore Westerlund, James Harding, NateDOhDoubleG, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, Travis Greb, Tristan Jones, Daniel Olivar, Jiangheng Lu, and special thanks, as always, goes out to Jerky's Minion, one of my OGs. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask me a question. I have a monthly AMA. Perhaps you want teasers for who the next guests are on my upcoming talk shows. Maybe you want to be part of my monthly discussion where my top patrons talk to me. Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the description box link for Patreon.